What is up, you guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to go over PulseChain, and I wanted to talk to you guys about what I'm seeing and what I'm thinking, and some stuff you may not have thought about that might blow your mind. So the reason I'm making this video is because I've seen, and there's been a lot of people, myself partially included, that over time, when we first launched, we're like, PulseChain's going 1,000x, 10,000x, whatever, right? And then slowly over time, as the general sentiment of each individual person here in the PulseChain ecosystem has become a little more bearish and a little more bearish and a little more bearish. Like at first it was like we're doing thousands of X's, right? And then it was like we're doing hundreds of X's. And now I'm seeing the same people be like, I think we can do 20x from here. So you can see how the bear market really affects everyone's mental processing of what's possible still, or dampens our expectations, which, hey man, fair enough. I mean, the SEC debacle came out, dumped us right down, and until that gets resolved, we might not see the fullest extent of what PulseChain can do. But that's not the point of today. The first thing is that case has been moved, or the court date has been moved from the 24th to the 31st for the hearing. And Richard, man, good luck to you. I hope that I hope it goes as well as it possibly can, and I wish I could be there. That'd be fantastic. But going back to Pulse, now we're way down here, right? So 40437. The question is, can Pulse only do 20x? Can Pulse only do 100x? What could this thing do? And what I want to bring you in this video is some thoughts about what would happen if, okay? And we're going to go to a spreadsheet in just a second. But the one thing I want you to consider is LP, liquidity, the liquidity pools. Could it be that your thoughts on how high, or lack of how high, that this thing could go could completely change based on liquidity? I'll show you what I mean here. So let's do a little experiment. And we'll play a couple games here, just theoretically speaking, right? Now, let's play the game from, you are Richard Hart. Okay, you're the founder. You've built PulseX, PulseChain, Hex. You've got this entire ecosystem to basically work with, and a dev team that can go in the back end on, let's say, PulseX and change some of the incentivization. Let's go and play a game. Okay, so first off, let's look at what's out there and let's look at what would happen based on farming and all that stuff. So now, if you're unfamiliar with how price moves in liquidity pools on the PulseX exchange or any kind of V2 style of liquidity pool, what happens is you have two sides of equal value liquidity in a pool, meaning if you have Pulse and DAI, you have, let's say, $10 here and $10 here worth when someone makes the pool or puts money into the pool, right? So you can't put $30 in Pulse and $10 in this side. It has to be even. Now, the amount of tokens on either side are going to have a ratio and can shift massively, right? For example, what I have here is the sell side liquidity for the DAI, USDC, USDT, and ETH pools, all paired with wrapped Pulse. Now, the amount of DAI in the pool, in this case, is just shy of 15 million. The amount of USDC in this pool is 6.4, 5.6 for USDT, and 9 million for ETH, which means the total amount in the pool for the ETH wrapped Pulse is 18 million, 11 million basically, 11.2 million for USDT. USDC is 12.8, and basically 30 million for wrapped Pulse and DAI. Now, why is this important to understand? Because, and there's a tweet that Richard Hart talked about a while ago, where, and I've talked about this in the past too, many, many times, that if you double the amount of liquidity on, or the amount of tokens on one side, like you increase the amount of tokens by 2, you 4x or increase the price of the token you didn't increase by 4. Because how does this happen? Well, when you multiply the one side of tokens by 2, you have to do the same for the other side of tokens in that pool, which means you divide by 2. Easy way to think about this is you can take the 2 on this side and the 2 on this side and multiply them together, and you get 4x. That is the exponential curve that prices work on in V2 pools. So here's the game now. How much economic energy would it take to move the price of Pulse, in this case, higher and higher and higher? Okay, so let's look at the total here. So the total with all pools currently, and it's shifted a little bit since I made this, but it's about $36 million in just ETH, USDT, USDC, and die. So in order for Pulse to do a 4x with the current liquidity, it would take about $36 million for it to do 4x, okay? If we wanted to do another 4x or do 16x, we'd have to add now 71 or 72 additional, right? Because this is 35 plus the next time we want to do a 4x, we have to add an additional 72 million. Then if we want to do another 4x, we have to add an additional 143, then 287, then 575 million. Now, this added all up together equals $1.1 billion based on current liquidity to reach a 1000x, okay? And this video is not about whether that's reasonable or not. This is what it would actually take in order for the price of Pulse to do a 1000x. This also doesn't take into consideration market participants either buying up in addition or selling down in addition to this scenario as well. This is just straight up how much money would it take to push this thing up to this price here, okay? And the question then becomes, okay, well, if you're a founder like we were originally thinking, how could you make this scenario easier? What tools do you have at your disposal to basically create the environment where price could move easier? And the question we also have to ask is, well, what is creating this much liquidity, right? Farms. PulseX V1 has farms, and you earn incentive, the incentive token for farming. Now, what would happen if those farms were removed? Well, all the liquidity on PulseX V1 would no longer be gaining fees from liquidity providing because that's not part of PulseX V1. It's only basically buying and burning PulseX. So there's no incentive to remain in PulseX V1, okay? What I would expect is most of this liquidity, if not the majority of it, would be pulled and possibly moved to PulseX V2 temporarily or removed from liquidity altogether. So that would make a completely different setup, wouldn't it? Now, if we were to come down and play this game as, okay, well, let's say the sell side LP, so all the DAI, USDC, USDT, and ETH are removed. Well, if you pulled the farms for everything, okay, and you had all the liquidity essentially from the users removed, what would happen then? Well, let's take a look. Let's say only 20% of the liquidity remained in the pools, okay? And this could be totally different. We could do 5%, we could do 10% here, but I'm gonna do 20% just to, say that some people would keep their tokens in liquidity for this sake. This is not a actual calculation of what would happen here, but I want to just illustrate this quickly here. So let's say everything was reduced by a factor of 5 on the sell side liquidity, right? We had basically 15 million, we're down to 3 million, so a fifth of what was in liquidity on the sell side, and so on and so forth, for a grand total of only $7.2 million in the sell side liquidity that's attached to Pulse. What would happen now if this was our setup where there was no farming, there was way lower liquidity? How easy would it be to move the price? Okay, let's take a look at this. It would only take $7.2 million to 2x the price of Pulse. Then it would take an additional 14 million to make 16x, 28 or 29 million to 64x, 57.5 million to 256. And if we go all the way to the bottom here, which you can see insane numbers where we're talking about 16,384x and 72 cent Pulse, that would take $460 million at that point. Now, if we add all that up, that's the important number here. In order for Pulse to do a 16,384x with this liquidity here that we talked about, where it's basically down 80%, it would only take 892 million. Isn't that interesting? 1.15 billion to do a 1000x, or 892.5 million to do a 16,384x. Okay, so you can see if you had the capacity to basically dictate what was and what wasn't incentivized, wouldn't it make sense potentially to do to time the farms to be removed so that the prices can rise easier? Maybe that's something to consider. I have no idea if this is what's actually going to happen here, but I wanted to just bring this to you because this is really interesting to think about. And I mean, as far as I'm seeing, it's a very real possibility of a strategic plan that could be implemented very, very quickly. And we're not done here yet, okay? So let's go back up and play one more game, all right? Let's say that this liquidity here for USDC, USDT, and DAI were removed even more, right? Let's say it was moved even more, but ETH and Pulse were the only two farms left as incentivized pairs. Let's talk about this for a second, because this is an interesting thing to think about. ETH typically moves prior to alts or altcoins, right? It typically goes on its run, and then everything trickles back into the altcoins related to Ethereum. So what if you knew that that was going to happen? Well, what could you do? Well, you could maintain a farm for ETH, eliminate the farms for anything else to do with stablecoins that would essentially hold down the price. And you could actually, if you reduce those farms, you would incentivize people to actually move their liquidity into ETH and Pulse, which would thicken this pool. Now, why would you want to do this though? Here's a thought experiment. If one thing is going up, right, an ETH, and Pulse now is deriving most of its value from the price of ETH, and we know about Hart's Law, where tokens bonded together through the liquidity rise together or lower together in price, what's going to happen to Pulse? Everything rises together. So what if you bonded your liquidity massively to ETH, allowed it to run up, then you disincentivized ETH and had all your liquidity lowered drastically, and then allowed the market essentially to be able to pump the living hell out of your token? I mean, wouldn't that be just the dream? Now, these numbers, in terms of possibilities, would definitely change, because at that point, you've risen up with ETH, and then you've done this strategic, or you've deployed this type of strategy. So at that point, I'm not even going to put the numbers, because the numbers become unfathomable. You get X's on top. You get ETH X's plus you would get X's on top based on the liquidity that's there. And these numbers here too, they could be higher or lower. Like, I mean, if everyone was like, I want to just get out, I'm going to leave 10% of the total liquidity there. Basically what we could go ahead and do is remove all of these individual 20% and turn them down to 10%. And if we were to do that, now it only takes 446 million to go ahead and 16,384x the price. So you can see how, depending on our liquidity setup and the incentives around that, it could take far less than billions of dollars to pump the ecosystem. And what would happen here, this is really interesting, is you would actually restrict people from moving in and out easy. I mean, you are essentially giving the people to hurt the price more, but you're disincentivizing larger players who hold a lot of tokens to sell down the price, because in order for them to sell a bunch of tokens in order to realize, let's say, hundreds of thousands or $1 million+ dollars, well, they have to significantly impact their own bag to do so. And the most conducive environment for them to actually realize these paper gains is to wait for higher liquidity. So there is a little bit of disincentivization there. Now, obviously, actors are going to do what actors are going to do. People are going to sell. People are going to buy irrationally, no matter what. It's always the case. But I hope this is making you feel like there is some strategies that could be deployed that could really change the landscape for how high Pulse can go, which makes it completely unpredictable. And hey, I'm just some guy on the internet coming up with these things. And imagine what a guy who is so far in advance or so much more advanced in their thinking than someone like me is, what could possibly be done, okay? Now, he's got a full dev team. He's been doing this for years. What else could be done? We don't even know. This could be just the tip of the iceberg here. So I wanted you to understand with this video, not that we are going to go do 16,384x, but I wanted you to think about how this ecosystem, the foundation of it in terms of liquidity, could drastically change what's possible in the future. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you learned something, because I mean, this is really fun to go through and do a thought experiment with, which that's all it is. But I hope you did learn something. I hope liquidity is starting to make sense. I hope you're starting to think outside the box a little bit more and maybe get an idea of just what's possible So that way you're not getting caught up in these people that are saying, oh, Pulse could only do a 20x and Pulse could only do a 100x. I mean, the liquidity is going to dictate what's possible in this ecosystem. And for the man who has keys to the liquidity or the incentivization of liquidity, that guy could probably change a lot of the outcome just from the liquidity setup alone. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you like and subscribe for much more content like this. I know I haven't made a PulseChain video like this in a while, but I wanted to bring something to you that might get your hopes up and might make you a little more excited for the future. So if you want to go way deeper than this, I do have my mastermind group. We're over half full now, and it's running out fast. So go check out the link in the description to check that out. It's a very limited group, like I said. I also do 1 hour coaching, 30-minute coaching if you need that. And if you want the best data for the TitanX ecosystem possible, go check out the link in the description as well to get TitanXHub Premium at 10% off. So that's it, though. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you have a fantastic day. Peace.